90%. Just let that number sink in for a second. By 1962, that's how many American homes had a television. It went from a strange new curiosity to the absolute center of family life in barely a decade. And it completely changed, well, everything. So let's dive into the story of the television. You see, its invention wasn't some single flash of genius. Oh no, it was this incredible century-long journey of breakthroughs, failures, and rivalries that we're gonna unpack right now. I mean, we all know what a TV is, right? It's just there. But how did we actually get from nothing to this glowing box in our living rooms? The story is a wild ride, full of spinning desks, lone inventors taking on corporate giants, and a bunch of technological revolutions that, honestly, are still shaping our world. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. The first era of television, what you could call the mechanical dream. Before anyone was even thinking about electronics, the challenge was purely physical. How in the world do you use gears and motors to scan a live image and turn it into a signal you can send somewhere? Well, the key idea actually came from a 23-year-old student in Germany named Paul Nipkow, way back in 1884. He patented this thing called the Nipkow disk. It's a brilliantly simple idea. You take a disk, poke holes in it in a spiral pattern, and as it spins, each hole scans one single line of an image. You have to picture how clunky this was. You needed a super bright light on whatever you were filming. The disk would spin, scanning it line by line. A photocell would turn that light into an electrical signal. And then on the other end, another disk had to be spinning in perfect sync to put the image back together. It was kind of like reading a page of a book, one line at a time, but at an insane speed. And if you want to know just how primitive this was, meet Stooky Bill. Yes, that's him. He was one of the very first television stars, and he's a ventriloquist dummy. A Scottish inventor, John Logie Baird, used him for a demonstration in 1925. And why a dummy? Because the system couldn't handle the low contrast of a real human face. The images were spooky, they were low res, only about 30 lines. But it worked. A moving face was sent through the air. History was made. Now, as clever as that mechanical TV was, it had a hard limit. It was a dead end. To get to the TV we know and love, we needed a huge leap forward. It was time to ditch the spinning discs and start painting pictures with beams of electrons. This was the electronic revolution. And the difference was just night and day. Mechanical systems were fuzzy, unreliable, and they topped out at about 120 lines of resolution. Electronic TV using cathode ray tubes was promising over 400 lines. We're talking clear, stable pictures, and from a device you could actually mass produce. The spinning disk was out, the electron gun was in. This whole revolution created a classic David versus Goliath story. On one side, you have this kid, Philo Farnsworth, a mostly self-taught farm boy from Utah. And on the other side, you've got Vladimir Zworykin, a brilliant scientist with the full backing of a corporate behemoth, RCA. They were both racing to perfect the electronic camera, and they both knew it was the key to the entire industry. Now, this fight didn't just happen in the lab. It was a decade-long war fought in the courtrooms. Farnsworth was actually the first to get a fully electronic system working back in 1927. But RCA, with its army of lawyers, fought him tooth and nail. But then, in a stunning upset, the U.S. Patent Office sided with Farnsworth. The little guy won. In the end, RCA had no choice but to pay up for the right to use his patents. Okay, so electronic TV is here. We have a sharp, stable, black and white picture. You know what has to come next, right? The next great quest was obvious, bringing the world into full, living color. But this was more than just a tech challenge. It was a massive business problem. See, by the 1950s, millions of people had already bought black and white TVs. So how do you introduce a new color signal without making all of those expensive sets totally useless overnight? You'd have a rebellion on your hands. Whatever the solution was, it had to be backward compatible. And the solution that RCA's engineers came up with was, well, it was pure genius. They figured out a way to create a broadcast signal that could essentially speak two languages at the same time, one for the old TVs and one for the new ones. Here's how they pulled it off. The signal still carried the normal black and white picture information. That's called luminance. But they cleverly tucked the color information, the chrominance, right inside that very same signal. Old black and white sets would just ignore the extra data and play the picture like always.
But the new color sets could detect that hidden info and use it to create a beautiful color image. It was absolutely seamless.
So you'd think color would take off immediately, right? Nope. The first national color broadcast was way back in 1954, the Tournament of Roses Parade. But color TVs were crazy expensive, and for a long time, there just wasn't much to watch in color. It actually took until the mid-1960s for color to really become mainstream. So far, we've really been focused on the technology inside the TV set, but that's only half the story. The next big evolution was all about how the signal got to the set in the first place, and it meant finally breaking free from the tyranny of the antenna. At first, it was all over-the-air broadcasting. You put up an antenna and hoped for the best. Then, in 1948, cable television started as a clever way to get clear signals to rural towns. And then came the real game changer. In 1962, the Telstar satellite beamed TV signals across the ocean, and suddenly, television was a truly global thing. For the viewer, the impact of this was just an explosion of choice. I mean, we went from a world where you were lucky if you got 3 or 4 channels to a world with dozens and then hundreds of options. Cable and satellite totally redefined what television even was. And that brings us to the modern day, to the final and maybe the most profound transformation in our story, the moment the television finally met the internet, creating the smart screens we all have now. Let's be honest. A smart TV isn't really just a TV anymore. It's a true convergence device. It's part computer, part set-top box, part traditional TV. It's a screen that doesn't just passively receive a signal, it actively goes out and pulls content from all over the world. And what's crazy is that this idea has been around for ages. The very first patent for an intelligent TV system was filed back in 1994, but the tech just wasn't ready. It took the big switch to digital TV in the 2000s to make it cheap enough and powerful enough for everybody to have one. And this really was the final piece of the puzzle. The television completed its transformation from this passive box that you just sat and stared at into a fully interactive entertainment hub for streaming, gaming, browsing, you name it. It became the digital heart of the home. So when you look back at the whole 100-year journey, it becomes pretty clear. There was no single inventor of television. It was a chain of innovations, a relay race of brilliant minds, each building on the work of those who came before. Think about it. We went from a fuzzy mechanical image of a puppet's face to a crystal clear 4K screen that streams movies from the other side of the planet in a heartbeat. The evolution has been absolutely mind-boggling, which leaves us with one last big question. What's the next revolution for the screen?